There is new CNN reporting about the military that we want to bring you. It's about the U.S. Army's air defense units. They are among the most overworked in the military. They've been stretched thin by global threats. The critical Army defense units are tasked with providing around-the-clock deterrence against our country's biggest adversaries. CNN national security producer Haley Britzky joins us now from Washington with more. Haley, tell us what you discovered and what you're hearing from folks inside the armed services.
Yeah, so Boris, like you said, the Army Air Defense Branch is one of, if not the most deployed branches in the service. Senior leaders are saying that, they have been deploying to the Pacific, to the Middle East, and to Europe, of course, as we see them training up Ukrainians to provide their own air defense against Russia's invasion. And those are critically important missions, but they are having an impact on soldiers. Leaders say that they're seeing an increase in air defense soldiers seeking out behavioral health, so meaning trying to go get mental health support on post. They are also, concerned of the wear and tear that these deployments are having on families, as well the unpredictable nature of these deployments. So leaders are working hard to mitigate some of that pressure, to take off some of that pressure on soldiers, because really those demands around the world are only increasing and will only be increasing over the next several years.
And in some regions, that threat is specifically looming large. Where are those regions where these units are feeling the hardest strain?
So the Indo-Pacific and Europe are where we're seeing some major strain on these units right now. In the Indo-Pacific, these soldiers are not only dealing with a lengthy list of operational requirements, but also training exercises with foreign allies and partners in the region. And given the vast size of the Indo-Pacific, they are, taking multiple days away from family just to travel, let alone do the exercises themselves. And then, of course, we have the soldiers in Europe who are now training Ukrainians on their own air defense systems provided by the U.S. and their allies. And so I spoke with a U.S. soldier who helped head up that Patriot training for the Ukrainians, who said it was some of the most grueling training days he's had, just given how intense they are, knowing what is at stake here, and hoping to give these Ukrainians every possible chance and giving them every tool in their toolkit on air defense.
And how are military leaders trying to address the problem now?
Yeah, so multiple lines of effort here, Boris, by the Army. We have a quite big enlistment bonus the Army is now offering for some air defense jobs, a little over $47,000, and hoping to fill out some of these new air defense units that they'll be standing up over the next several years. They also are embedding mental health specialists into the brigades in order to give these soldiers someone to talk to if they need it, reducing commitment in the Middle East, going from 5 battalions deploying in that region to 2 battalions now, because partners are able to kind of provide their own air defense. And then also just encouraging leaders to increase their communication with families, mitigate some of that pressure and that unpredictability. So leaders are really working in the background here to try to take care of their soldiers while also meeting those mounting mission requirements.
And joining me now is CNN military analyst and retired U.S. Army Commanding General Mark Hertling for some reaction to that story. Now, General, what do you make of the Army's concerns about this rampant burnout among its missile defense units? I mean, is this something that's always been a problem?
Paula, this is not new. Haley's reporting is very good, but it's a problem that's been around for decades. It has to do with the type of equipment we're talking about. Air defense falls into 3 categories. Man-portable, the ones that are fired from a soldier's shoulder, like the Stinger missile, something they call LOMAD, which is the low altitude equipment like the Gepards or the Avengers that we're seeing in Ukraine right now. And then there's the HIMAD, the high altitude equipment that shoots down cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and high flying aircraft. It's the HIMAD area where there are the problems, the so-called Patriot systems. And it's very easy for the public to say, hey, let's just send the Patriots here or send them there. But there are very few of these equipment. They're called high demand, low density pieces of equipment. There's several areas in the Army that are like this, and Patriot is the #1 system that's like this. And it's because, #1, they cost so much. #2, it takes so much time to train soldiers on them. And #3, they have defensive requirements in various parts of the world. As Haley mentioned, Korea, Taiwan, the Middle East, and we've been supporting our allies and partners with some of these systems as well.
I want to read you something that the commander of the 10th Army Air and Missile Defense Command said in Europe. Quote, "Unfortunately, business is good for air defense." Of course, that's very apparent when it comes to Ukraine. So do you think this burnout could impact or even threaten the U.S.'s efforts in Ukraine?
Oh, it certainly could. And the 10th Air and Missile Defense Command in Europe used to be one of the units I commanded in Europe. There was one Patriot battalion, a unit that has 3 batteries of Patriots. We have given one of those batteries to Ukraine. So it is down now to 2 batteries with about 90 soldiers in each. And what happens is when you give those pieces of equipment away, or when you send them off to allies, the soldiers that remain that are still doing a very viable mission are stuck with taking up the slack. It's like taking an entire organization, cutting it by 1/3, and then saying, hey, continue to do the mission you've been asked to do. That's what's happening. So the 10th AAMDC in Europe is just one of several that are like this. And yeah, work is good, but there's not that many of them. And the next question I'm sure you're going to ask is, well, why didn't the Army make more of these? Because they are extremely expensive, and there's a budget that has to do with not only the systems, but also the missiles that they fire.
Fair enough. Now, speaking of Ukraine, though, the country's deputy defense minister just announced that Russian forces have made advances in eastern Ukraine. How significant is this?
Well, all the reads that I'm getting, Paula, is the fact that Ukrainian forces are actually countering those Russian advances in the eastern part, in the Donbass. And at the same time, the Ukrainian forces are also continuing their efforts in the southeastern part of the country, Zaporizhia and Kherson. So all of the front lines, that 600-mile or 600-kilometer of front line from the north all the way down to the southeast is being covered. Ukraine is advancing in many of them. Russia is taking advantage and attempting to regain some territory. But every read that I'm getting from my counterparts in Ukraine is that they're not being very successful in doing that.
Also overnight, Russia launched an air attack on the capital of Kyiv. The city's military administration says that Russia used Iranian-made drones. Kyiv's air defenses destroyed all of the drones, according to the city's leaders, but multiple homes were damaged by falling debris. A resident was injured. Is this a growing threat for Ukraine? I mean, Russia using these Iranian drones?
It's been a threat for 6 months. The combination of drones, which are relatively cheap, are sent in first. So it drains off some of the air defense pieces of equipment we were just talking about. And then the Russians will then send in the larger missiles after they think they've depleted weapons against the drones. So you're going to see this combination tactics of firing actually very inexpensive drones against cities that have large explosive power to drain off the Ukrainian air defense, and then followed up by much bigger missiles. And that's part of the air defense problem we were talking about earlier. The amount of weapons that are being used to counter this air threat by Russia is just off the chart. We have never seen this many drones, this many caliber missiles fired at one time. And the good news is Ukraine is shooting down most of them. They've put up a protective barrier, a wall, if you will, that's very difficult to do. And they're having more success than countries like Israel using the Iron Dome. They are actually protecting their people very well with the equipment they've been given by the West. But again, we get back to the problem. Low density, high demand equipment being used in Ukraine that have been purchased, truthfully, for our security, for the U.S. security.
General Mark Hertling, thank you.
Pleasure, Paula. Thank you.